The message came through during lunch, which Owen Fletcher thought was typical of how his week had been going. He had just finished stitching up a cargo hauler's pet that had gotten into a fight with some imported rodents when his communicator started flashing red. Red meant emergency. Red meant someone was panicking. Owen wiped his hands and accepted the call. The face that appeared on his screen made him pause. It was a Dalari, one of those wolf-like aliens who ran most of the military operations in this sector. They had fur that looked like it was made of silver wire and bone ridges that jutted out from their skulls like crowns. This particular Dalari had scars crossing his snout and wore enough metals to probably stop a bullet. "Are you the human animal doctor?" the Dalari asked. His translator made his voice sound like gravel in a blender. "Veterinarian, yes," Owen said. "Dr. Owen Fletcher. How can I help you?" "Our Ravenclaw is dying. You will come immediately." It was not a request. The screen went dark before Owen could ask what a Ravenclaw was or why they thought he could help. His assistant, a young woman named Ruby from the farming colonies, stuck her head in from the other room. "Did that sound ominous to you?" she asked. "Very," Owen said, already packing his medical bag. "Look up Ravenclaw for me." Ruby pulled out her data pad and her eyes went wide. Oh no. Boss, these things are apex predators from Dalar Prime. They use them as war beasts. Says here one Ravenclaw can take down an armored vehicle. There was an incident 5 years ago where one got loose on a station and killed 40 people before they stopped it. Owen checked his bag. Scalpels, sutures, antibiotics, scanners, sedatives. Everything was there. "And they want me to treat one. Boss, maybe you should. If I don't go and it dies, they will blame humans. If I go and it dies anyway, at least I tried." Owen headed for the door. "Cancel my afternoon appointments." The Dalari military compound was on the far side of Cross Point Station, in a section where the walls were reinforced and the air smelled like weapon discharge and dominance. Owen had never been there before. He had no reason to. His clients were usually farmers, pet owners, and the occasional exotic animal dealer who got in over their head. 2 Dalari soldiers met him at the entrance. They were both taller than him by a foot and looked like they could bend steel bars for fun. They did not speak. They just turned and expected him to follow, which he did. The compound was busy. Soldiers were running drills in a courtyard. Weapons were being cleaned and stacked. Everyone stopped to stare at Owen as he passed. A human in a Dalari military facility was apparently quite the sight. Owen kept his eyes forward and his medical bag close. They brought him to a large chamber that had been converted into some kind of medical bay. Owen could see monitoring equipment, surgical tools that looked like they belonged in a horror movie, and about 20 Dalari in medical uniforms standing around looking frustrated and angry. In the center of the room was a containment field, and inside that field was the biggest creature Owen had ever seen outside of a zoo. The Ravenclaw was the size of a shuttle. It had midnight black scales that seemed to absorb light, 6 legs that ended in claws as long as Owen's forearm, and a head that was mostly teeth. Rows and rows of serrated teeth. Bioluminescent markings ran along its flanks, pulsing weakly like a dying heartbeat. Its eyes were closed and its breathing was shallow. A Dalari who had even more medals than the one on the screen stepped forward. "I am General Torvak." "You are the human animal doctor?" "Veterinarian," Owen corrected gently. "Yes, sir." "What happened?" "We do not know. 3 days ago, Darkfang stopped eating. 2 days ago, he could not stand. Yesterday, he collapsed. Our medical experts have done everything. Stimulants, regenerative serums, genetic therapy. Nothing works. He is dying." Owen looked at the massive predator. "Darkfang is his name. He is bonded to my son. If he dies..." Torvak did not finish the sentence. "He did not need to. Tell me about his behavior before he stopped eating. Any changes? Any signs of pain?" One of the medical officers spoke up. "We ran full scans. No infections. No parasites. No toxins, no injuries. There is nothing wrong with him that we can find." Owen set down his bag. "Has he been in any fights recently? Any accidents?" "No. He has been in holding for a diplomatic event. No combat for 6 weeks. What does he eat?" The medical officer looked annoyed at such a basic question. "Live, prey, meat, bones, the same as always." Owen walked closer to the containment field. The Dalari tensed. "Is it safe to approach?" "No," General Torvak said flatly. "Even weakened, a Ravenclaw can kill in seconds. If you enter that field, you do so at your own risk. I will not be responsible for your death, human. I understand, Owen said. He looked at the dying creature and then at the dozen Dolari medical experts who had run every test and tried every treatment their advanced science could provide. He thought about the broken animals he had treated back on Earth. The lions with infected wounds, the tigers with digestive problems, the bears with arthritis. Sometimes the most dangerous creatures had the simplest problems. Turn off the containment field, Owen said. Absolutely not, the medical officer snapped. That is insane. Owen looked at General Torvak. Sir, I cannot help if I cannot examine the patient. I need to get close. I need to check things your scanners might not show. Torvak studied Owen for a long moment. You understand this creature could tear you apart? Yes, sir. And you wish to approach anyway? It is my job, sir. Torvak made a gesture. The containment field flickered and died. Every Dolari in the room reached for a weapon. Owen picked up his medical bag and walked calmly toward the massive alien predator, hoping that big cats were the same everywhere in the galaxy. Darkfang opened one eye when Owen got within 10 feet. It was yellow, with a pupil like a vertical slash, and it fixed on Owen with the kind of focus that predators reserved for their next meal. The creature's chest rumbled with a sound too low for human ears to properly hear, but Owen felt it in his bones. It was a warning. Back off or die. Owen stopped walking but did not back up. He had learned a long time ago that showing fear to an apex predator was the fastest way to become prey, not that he was not afraid. His heart was hammering and his hands wanted to shake, but he kept his breathing steady and his movements slow. Easy, Owen said softly. His voice was calm, almost boring. He was not trying to communicate words. Tone was what mattered. Confidence without aggression. Presence without threat. Nobody here wants to hurt you. The Dolari medical officer made a disgusted sound. It cannot understand you, human. It is an animal. Owen did not take his eyes off Darkfang. Animals understand plenty. They just do not care about the same things we do. The Ravenclaw tried to lift its head higher. The movement was sluggish, weak. The bioluminescent markings along its body flickered like dying lights. It opened its mouth and Owen saw those rows of serrated teeth, each one as long as his hand. The mouth opened wide enough to swallow him whole. A hiss came out, wet and pained. Owen took another step forward. Then another. The Dolari were all talking at once, telling him to stop, calling him insane. General Torvak raised one clawed hand and they fell silent. The general was watching Owen with an expression that might have been respect or might have been curiosity about how a human would look getting eaten. Owen reached the Ravenclaw's head. Up close, the creature was even more massive. Each scale was the size of Owen's palm. The claws on its front feet could have punched through hull plating. Its breath smelled like rotting meat and something acidic. This close, Owen could see the creature was shaking slightly. Not from aggression. From pain, I know, Owen said quietly. I know it hurts. Let me help. He reached out slowly and placed one hand on the Ravenclaw's snout. The scales were warm and felt like rough stone. The creature flinched but did not pull away. Owen felt the tension in its body, the way every muscle was locked tight. He had seen this before in big cats at the zoo back on Earth. Animals in severe pain often went still, conserving energy, waiting to either heal or die. Owen began his examination. He ran his hands along the creature's neck, checking for swelling or heat. Nothing. He checked the legs, looking for injuries or breaks. Nothing. He looked at the eyes, checking pupil response and the color of the membranes. Everything seemed normal except the creature was clearly dying. Your scans showed nothing? Owen asked without looking back. Nothing, the medical officer confirmed. We checked for every known pathogen, every toxin, every possible battlefield injury. There is no cause for this decline. Owen moved to the side of the creature's head. The Ravenclaw watched him but did not move. It was too weak to be a threat now, and maybe some part of its brain recognized that Owen was trying to help, or maybe it just did not have the energy to care anymore. Open your mouth, Owen said. He knew the creature could not understand him, but he said it anyway. He gently touched the jaw joint, feeling for the muscles there. The Ravenclaw made a low sound and tried to pull back. Owen felt the resistance and paused. General, I need bright lights, and I need them pointed right here. He indicated the creature's mouth. Torvak made another gesture. 2 soldiers brought portable lights and aimed them where Owen indicated. The Ravenclaw did not like the lights. It tried to turn its head away, but Owen kept his hand on its jaw, gentle but firm. "I am going to open your mouth now," Owen said. "Please do not eat me." He applied pressure to the jaw joint the same way he would with a large dog or a cat. The Ravenclaw resisted for a moment, then its mouth opened. The smell that came out was worse than before. Rotten meat mixed with something chemical and wrong. Owen leaned in, using the lights to see past the teeth. The inside of the mouth was dark purple, almost black. The tongue was thick and covered in backward-facing barbs, and there on the left side of the jaw Owen saw it. One of the large teeth in the back was broken, not just chipped, shattered. The break went below the gum line, and the surrounding tissue was swollen and dark green. Infection, massive. Infection spreading through the jaw and probably into the bloodstream by now. Owen leaned back and let the Ravenclaw close its mouth. The creature's eye tracked him, still wary but less aggressive now. Owen turned to face the Dalari medical team. 20 sets of eyes were fixed on him. "You have got a broken tooth with a serious infection," Owen said. "The break is below the gum line, so your scanners probably missed it. The infection has spread through the jaw and is causing sepsis. That is why he stopped eating. That is why he collapsed. He is in constant pain and slowly starving because he cannot chew." The medical officer looked offended. "A tooth? You are saying this magnificent war beast is dying because of a tooth?" "Yes," Owen said simply. "On Earth, this kills big predators all the time. A lion breaks a tooth eating bones. The tooth gets infected. The lion cannot eat properly. It starves. Sometimes they survive, but usually they die. This is the same thing, just bigger." General Torvak stepped forward. His expression was hard to read. "Can you fix this, human?" Owen looked at the dying Ravenclaw, then at his medical bag, then back at the general. He thought about the tiger he had treated 5 years ago at the preserve. Infected tooth, same problem. The tiger had tried to eat him twice during the procedure. "But it had lived." "Yes, sir," Owen said. "I can fix it." The argument lasted 15 minutes. The Dalari medical officer insisted that their own surgical team should handle the procedure. They had the latest technology, the best equipment, centuries of combat medicine experience. Owen let them talk. He had learned not to interrupt proud people while they were being defensive. General Torvak finally cut through the debate. "Dr. Fletcher identified the problem. Dr. Fletcher will fix it. That is the end of this discussion." The medical officer's fur bristled, but he said nothing more. Torvak turned to Owen. "What do you need?" "Your surgical tools, but I will use my own protocols. Sedatives and antibiotics, but I need to calculate the dosages myself, and I need everyone to be quiet during the procedure. No sudden movements, no loud noises." "Why?" one of the younger Dalari asked. "Because even sedated, a predator this size can wake up if it feels threatened. And if it wakes up while I have my hands in its mouth, we will all have a very bad day." They brought him what he asked for. The surgical tools were intimidating, designed for quick battlefield amputations and emergency repairs on wounded soldiers. Owen selected the ones he could use and set aside the ones that looked like torture devices. He examined the Dalari sedatives and antibiotics, checking their chemical composition against his datapad. "These are way too strong," Owen said. "These are designed to knock out a Dalari warrior and keep them unconscious during combat surgery. If I use these doses on an already weakened animal, I will kill it." The medical officer bristled again. "Those are standard doses. For your people, not for a sick predator." Owen did the calculations in his head, then double-checked them. "I need about 40% of your standard dose for the sedative. The antibiotic needs to be adjusted too. Different metabolism." "How do you know this will work?" Torvak asked. It was a reasonable question. "I do not know for certain," Owen admitted. "But on Earth, we learned to treat thousands of different species. Different sizes, different metabolisms, different biology. The math is complicated, but the principle is simple. Too much medicine kills. Too little does nothing. You find the middle ground through careful observation and adjustment." He prepared the injections himself, ignoring the Dalari medical staff who watched like he was performing some kind of mystical ritual. Maybe to them it was. Their medicine was about keeping soldiers fighting, pumping them full of stimulants and repair nanites. Owen's medicine was about understanding the patient and giving it exactly what it needed to heal itself. The sedative went in through an injection site near the creature's shoulder. Owen had to push the needle through scales that were tougher than leather. The Ravenclaw hissed and tried to pull away, but it was too weak to do much more than flinch. Owen kept his hand on its head, speaking in that same calm voice. "Easy, Darkfang. This is going to make you feel better. Just let it work." The effect was not immediate. The Dalari sedatives were designed for fast action, but Owen's reduced dose worked slower, gentler. The Ravenclaw's breathing gradually slowed. The tension in its muscles eased. The bioluminescent markings stopped flickering and settled into a steady, dim glow. After 5 minutes, the creature's eyes closed and its head lowered to the floor. Owen waited another 2 minutes, watching for any signs of distress. Heart rate steady, breathing regular. The sedative was working. He turned to the watching Dalari. "All right, this is going to take about 3 hours. I need silence and I need space. General, you can stay if you want. Everyone else, back up at least 10 feet. The medical staff reluctantly moved back. Torvak stayed where he was, arms crossed, watching. A younger Dalari who had been standing silently in the corner moved forward slightly. Owen recognized him from the bond scent. This was Torvak's son, Darkfang's bonded partner. "You can stay too," Owen said, "but stay where I can see you. If something goes wrong, I need to focus on the patient, not worry about you." The young Dalari nodded and sat down cross-legged about 5 feet away. His eyes never left Darkfang. Owen got to work. He positioned the light so he could see clearly into the creature's mouth. Opening the jaw was harder when the Ravenclaw was unconscious. Dead weight was always heavier than people expected. Owen used a surgical prop to keep the mouth open and started his examination of the broken tooth. The damage was worse than he thought. The tooth had shattered from some kind of impact, probably biting down on something too hard. The fragments had been driven into the gum, creating multiple infection sites. The surrounding bone was showing signs of degradation. Left untreated for another week, the infection would have spread to the brain. Darkfang would have died, and it would not have been peaceful. Owen started by cleaning the wound. He used surgical picks to remove the tooth fragments, working carefully to avoid damaging the healthy tissue. The infection had created pockets of pus that had to be drained and flushed. The smell was horrible. Even the Dalari, who were used to battlefield medicine, looked uncomfortable. "This is what your scanners missed," Owen said, mostly to himself but loud enough for the others to hear. "Organic material, broken down, hidden under the gum line. Your sensors were looking for active pathogens, not structural damage." The tooth extraction took an hour. The root was embedded deep in the jawbone and had to be removed in pieces. Owen worked with steady hands, using techniques he had learned from decades of veterinary work. Each piece of shattered tooth came out, followed by more cleaning, more flushing. By the time he was done, his arms ached and his back was screaming. But the wound was clean. Next came the antibiotics. Owen injected them directly into the jaw tissue, targeting the infected areas. Then he packed the wound with surgical material that would slowly dissolve and release more antibiotics over the next few days. Finally, he sutured the gum tissue closed, using dissolvable stitches that would not need to be removed. The last step was IV fluids and broad-spectrum antibiotics. Darkfang had been starving for days and was severely dehydrated. The fluids would help stabilize the creature while its body fought off the infection. Owen stepped back and checked his work. The jaw was sutured, the wound packed, the IV in place. He looked at his chrono. 3 hours and 20 minutes. Close enough. He turned to General Torvak and his son. "It is done. Now we wait and see if it works." Darkfang woke up 6 hours later. Owen had stayed the entire time, monitoring the creature's vital signs and adjusting the IV drip as needed. The Dalari medical staff had tried to leave several times, but General Torvak ordered them to remain and observe. If the humans' methods worked, they needed to learn them. The Ravenclaw's eyes opened slowly, unfocused at first. Then awareness returned and the creature tried to stand. Its legs shook with the effort. Owen moved forward carefully, hands visible, movement slow. "Easy now. Take your time. You have been through a lot." The creature's head swung toward Owen, and for a moment everyone tensed. This was the moment when an animal would either recognize help or only see a threat. The Ravenclaw stared at Owen with those yellow eyes. Then it made a sound, not a growl or a hiss, but something almost questioning. It lowered its head and sniffed at Owen, breath hot and still smelling of antibiotics. Torvak's son stood up slowly. "Darkfang?" The Ravenclaw's head turned toward the voice. Recognition flashed in its eyes. The bioluminescent markings began to pulse brighter, stronger than they had in days. The creature took 2 unsteady steps toward its bonded partner and pressed its massive head against the young Dalari's chest. The young man wrapped his arms around the creature's neck and Owen saw his shoulders shake. He was crying, He will need soft food for a few days, Owen said, giving them space. Nothing hard, nothing that requires heavy chewing. The surgical site needs to heal. Keep the IV fluids going for another 12 hours. The antibiotics need to continue for 2 weeks, full course, even after he seems better. General Torvak stepped forward. His expression was hard to read, but his voice was quieter than before. You saved him. I treated an infection, Owen said. His body did the healing. That is how it works. Our medical team missed this. Our scanners, our technology, our expertise. We missed a broken tooth. Owen packed his tools back into his medical bag. You were looking for the wrong thing. Combat medicine focuses on battlefield injuries, toxins, trauma. You train to keep warriors alive under fire. A broken tooth is not a combat injury, so your protocols did not include it. The medical officer who had been so defensive earlier approached. His ears were lowered, a sign of submission in Dalari body language. Would you teach us these methods you used? Owen looked at the officer, then at the other medical staff. They were all watching him now, not with anger or skepticism, but with something like respect. Or maybe curiosity. It was hard to tell with alien expressions. The methods are not complicated, Owen said. Observe the patient. Look for behavioral changes. Check the basics before assuming something exotic. On Earth, we have a saying in medicine. When you hear hoofbeats, think horses, not zebras. It means the simplest explanation is usually correct. But we have advanced scanners, one of the younger medics said. Should we not use them? Use them. But do not rely only on them. Technology is a tool. It helps you see things you cannot see with your eyes. But it can also make you miss things that are right in front of you. Darkfang was showing you he had mouth pain. He stopped eating. He was moving his jaw strangely. The behavior was the clue. The scanner just confirmed it. Owen spent the next 2 hours teaching them basic veterinary examination techniques. How to check an animal without threatening it. How to read body language. How to look for the small signs of pain or distress that scanners might miss. The Dalari medical staff listened and took notes and asked questions that showed they were actually thinking about what he was saying. Word of what happened spread through the Dalari compound within hours. By the next day, Owen started getting messages. A Telvan merchant whose racing beast was sick. A Grinned farmer whose livestock were dying. A Scythian whose companion creature was acting strange. They all wanted the human vet who saved the Ravenclaw. Ruby was grinning when Owen got back to his clinic. Boss, you are famous. I have been getting calls all day. Everyone wants to hire you. Famous for doing my job, Owen muttered, but he was smiling too. He looked at the list of calls. 12 different species, 15 different problems. Some were probably serious. Some were probably simple. All of them were people who had exhausted their own experts and were willing to try the human's approach. Over the next 3 weeks, Owen traveled to 6 different stations and colonies. The Telvan racing beast had parasites that were easy to treat once you knew what to look for. The Grinned livestock were suffering from mineral deficiency because the soil on their new colony world lacked selenium. Simple supplement fixed it. The Scythian's companion creature was not sick at all. It was bored. It was a social species being kept alone. Owen recommended getting it a companion and providing enrichment activities. Each case was different, but the approach was the same. Observe, ask questions. Look for the simple answer before assuming something complex. Most of the time, the solution was not exotic. It was basic biology and basic care being overlooked because everyone was looking for complicated problems. General Torvak sent him a message 3 weeks after treating Darkfang. The message was short and direct, the Dalari way. Dr. Fletcher, Darkfang is fully recovered. He is eating normally and his bond strength has returned. My son wishes to thank you personally. But more than that, I wish to ask you something. Would you be willing to train our military veterinary corps? We have animals of war, but we have no one who understands them the way you do. We have been treating them like weapons. Perhaps it is time we treated them like the living creatures they are. Name your price. Owen read the message twice. Then he looked around his small clinic on Cross Point Station. It was a good clinic. He liked his work here. But training an entire veterinary corps for one of the most powerful military forces in the sector, that could change how they treated all their animals. That could save thousands of creatures from the kind of suffering Darkfang had endured. He sent back a reply. General Torvak, I will do it. But I do not want payment. I want your promise that every Dalari military animal will receive proper care and regular health checks. No more war beasts dying from broken teeth. Deal? The reply came back within minutes. Deal, Dr. Fletcher. When can you start? Owen smiled and started packing his bags. Ruby could handle the clinic for a few months. He had some teaching to do. 6 months after treating Darkfang, Owen found himself on a transport heading to the Shrike colonies. The call had come in marked as priority emergency, which meant someone important was very worried. The Shrike were insectoid, logical to a fault, and controlled 7 star systems. They were not the type to panic. So when their High Council personally requested his help, Owen knew it was serious. The briefing came through while he was still in transit. The Shrike's primary food source was dying. The creatures were called drifters, massive filter feeders that floated through the atmosphere of their gas giant homeworld. They absorbed nutrients from the gas clouds and converted them into protein-rich pods that the Shrike harvested. Without the drifters, millions of Shrike would starve within a year. Owen reviewed the data the Shrike had sent. They had thrown every resource at the problem. Xenobiologists, atmospheric scientists, genetic specialists. They had run thousands of tests. Found no pathogens, no toxins, no genetic abnormalities. The drifters were simply dying and nobody knew why. The transport docked at Shrike Prime Station 3 days later. The delegation that met Owen was led by someone who introduced herself as researcher, Hive Unit 47. She had 4 arms, compound eyes, and an exoskeleton that gleamed like polished metal. Her translator gave her voice a clicking, mechanical quality. Dr. Fletcher, thank you for coming. We are aware of your success with other cases. However, I must be honest. Many in our government believe this is beneath your expertise. This is not a sick animal. This is an ecological collapse affecting billions of organisms. Owen followed her through the station. Tell me what you have found so far. Nothing useful. The drifters show no signs of disease. Their tissue samples are normal. The atmospheric composition of their habitat has remained stable. There are no new predators, no invasive species, no obvious stressors. They are simply dying at an unprecedented rate. We lose approximately 2% of the population each week. How long has this been happening? 18 months. We first noticed the decline 2 years ago, but attributed it to normal population fluctuation. Then it accelerated. They took a shuttle down to the gas giant. The planet was beautiful in a terrifying way, with bands of purple and orange clouds swirling in storms larger than Earth. The drifters lived in a specific layer of the atmosphere where the pressure and temperature were just right. The shuttle descended carefully, monitoring systems flashing warnings about the crushing atmosphere outside. When they reached the drifter habitat zone, Owen pressed his face against the viewport. The creatures were incredible. Each one was the size of a building, with translucent bodies that rippled with internal lights. They had no apparent eyes or mouth, just vast filtering membranes that spread out like wings. They moved slowly through the gas clouds, undulating peacefully. Except they did not look peaceful. They looked tired. How long do they normally stay at this altitude? Owen asked. Hive Unit 47 checked her data pad. This is their primary feeding depth. They maintain this altitude for most of their lives, only descending to reproduce. Do they ever rise higher? Not typically. The food density decreases at higher altitudes. Owen watched the drifters for another hour. The Shrike researchers showed him their data, pointing out all the things they had tested. Everything looked normal on the scans, but the behavior looked wrong to Owen. The creatures were working too hard. Their filtering membranes were pulsing faster than seemed efficient. They would drift for a while, then slowly sink, then have to pump their internal gas bladders to rise again. They are exhausted, Owen said finally. We considered fatigue, but found no cause. They have adequate food. No parasites draining their energy. No disease affecting their muscles. Show me the atmospheric composition data again, not just recent data. Go back 5 years. Hive Unit 47 pulled up the historical records. Owen studied them carefully. The Shrike were right. The atmosphere was stable. Except it was not exactly the same. The density had shifted very slightly. The change was tiny, less than 1%. The Shrike computer models had flagged it as negligible. What industries do you run on this planet? Owen asked. Processing facilities in the upper atmosphere. We refine gases for fuel and industrial use. Why? Because your industrial output has changed the atmospheric density just enough to make it harder for the drifters to maintain their altitude. It is like making someone run on a treadmill that gets slightly steeper every month. At first they do not notice. Then they get tired. Then they start failing. Hive Unit 47's antennae twitched in what might have been skepticism. A density change of 0.7%? Our models predicted that would have no significant impact. Your models were wrong. On Earth, we learned this the hard way. Coral reefs dying from tiny pH changes. Bird populations collapsing because insects hatch 1 week earlier than they used to. Whale migration routes changing from temperature shifts too small for humans to feel. Life operates on narrow margins. You can have the best technology in the galaxy, but if you do not understand how sensitive biological systems are, your models will miss things. If you are correct, what is the solution? Owen thought for a moment. You need to restore the atmospheric density in this zone, or provide artificial assistance so the drifters can maintain altitude without exhausting themselves. Can you seed the atmosphere with compounds to adjust the density? Yes, but that would require shutting down some industrial operations. The economic cost would be substantial. The cost of losing your entire food supply will be worse. Hive Unit 47 was silent for a long moment. Then she tapped commands into her datapad. I will present your findings to the High Council. If they agree, can you help us design the intervention? Yes, but you also need to provide temporary feeding platforms at optimal altitudes. Give the drifters a place to rest while their habitat recovers. They have been working too hard for too long. Some of them might not make it even with intervention, but you can save most of them. The High Council was harder to convince than Owen expected. They wanted more studies, more models, more certainty. Owen spent 2 days explaining basic ecology to beings who understood quantum physics, but had never thought about how exhaustion kills. Finally, he showed them videos from Earth, footage of whale populations declining from noise pollution, images of reefs bleaching from temperature changes, examples of ecosystems collapsing from tiny environmental shifts that seemed irrelevant until the damage was already done. Earth almost died from this kind of thinking, Owen said. We thought we were too smart to harm our planet. We thought small changes did not matter. We were wrong. Our technology was advanced, but we did not understand the living systems we depended on. We nearly destroyed ourselves learning that lesson. You do not have to make the same mistake. The High Council approved his plan. It took 3 months to implement. They reduced industrial emissions and seeded the upper atmosphere with density-adjusting compounds. They built floating platforms where drifters could rest and feed efficiently. Owen stayed to monitor the results, adjusting the approaches needed. The die-off slowed within 6 weeks, stopped completely within 3 months. The drifter population began recovering. The Shrike had saved their food supply, and with it their entire civilization. On his last day before leaving, Hive Unit 47 met him at the transport dock. Dr. Fletcher, our High Council wishes to offer you a permanent position as ecological advisor. Your perspective has value we did not anticipate, Owen smiled. I appreciate that, but I am a vet, not an ecologist. What I did here was not special. I just looked at living creatures and asked if they seemed healthy and happy. That is something anyone can learn to do. Perhaps, but we did not think to ask that question. We saw numbers and models. You saw tired animals. That made the difference. Owen boarded the transport thinking about that. How many other civilizations were making the same mistake? Building technology, running models, forgetting to look at the actual living things they depended on. Maybe that was humanity's real contribution to the galaxy. Not better weapons or faster ships. Just the simple wisdom of remembering to care about whether creatures were okay. Owen returned to Cross Point Station to find his clinic had become something of a legend. Ruby had turned away so many clients that she had started keeping a waiting list. The list had over 200 names on it, species from across the sector, all wanting the human vet who looked at things differently. I cannot possibly see all of these people, Owen said, staring at the list. Ruby shrugged. So train more vets. Teach people your methods. You did it with the Delari. Do it for everyone else too. It was a good idea, but Owen was not sure how to make it happen. He was one person. He could teach a few dozen students maybe, but the demand was across multiple star systems. How do you spread knowledge that fast? The answer came from an unexpected source. A message arrived from someone named Dr. Patricia Hayes, a human xenobiologist working 3 systems away. Owen did not know her, but apparently she knew him. Dr. Fletcher, I have been following your work with great interest. What you are doing is not just veterinary medicine. It is applied ecology, behavioral biology, and comparative anatomy all wrapped together. I believe humanity has a unique perspective on life sciences because Earth forced us to understand thousands of species just to survive. I would like to help you formalize this into a teaching curriculum that can be distributed across the galaxy. Interested? Owen was very interested. Over the next year, they built something new. A program that combined Earth's veterinary knowledge, ecological understanding, and behavioral science into a framework that worked across alien species. They called it comparative life sciences. The core principle was simple. Life everywhere faced similar problems: finding food, avoiding pain, reproducing, surviving in their environment. The details varied, but the fundamentals were universal. They started small running classes on Crosspoint Station. 20 students from 15 different species. Some were medical professionals looking to expand their knowledge. Some were farmers trying to keep their livestock healthy. Some were just people who loved animals and wanted to understand them better. Owen taught them the basics: how to observe behavior, how to recognize pain and distress across different body types, how to think about environmental needs, how to consider that sometimes the simplest answer was the right one. Dr. Hayes taught the theoretical framework, explaining the evolutionary principles that made these methods work across species. The students struggled at first. Many came from cultures where animals were tools or resources, not individuals with needs and behaviors. The idea of spending hours watching a creature to understand its normal behavior seemed wasteful. Why not just run a scan? Because scans tell you what is wrong, Owen explained. Observation tells you why it happened and how to prevent it next time. Both are important. But if you only ever use technology, you will miss the patterns. One of his students was a Grinned farmer named Bach. The Grinned were stocky, four-armed, and had skin like rough bark. Bach raised livestock on a colony world and had been losing animals to an unknown illness. The local vet had run every test and found nothing. "Show me a video of your healthy animals," Owen said. "Then show me a video of the sick ones." Bach pulled up footage on his datapad. The healthy livestock moved in groups, grazing together, their tentacle-like feeding appendages moving in synchronized patterns. The sick ones isolated themselves, their appendages moving erratically out of sync. "They are stressed," Owen said. "Something in their environment is wrong. Not a disease, not a toxin, something that makes them uncomfortable. But I provide everything they need: food, water, shelter. What about social structure? These are herd animals, right? How are you grouping them?" Bach explained his setup. He kept them in pens sized for efficiency, mixing ages and sexes to maximize space usage. Owen winced. "That is your problem. You are keeping them in groups that make sense for farming, but not for their social behavior. They need age-appropriate groups, proper social hierarchies, space to establish territory. You have them so stressed their immune systems are failing." It took Bach 3 weeks to restructure his farm. When he did, the mystery illness disappeared. The animals were healthier, grew faster, and produced better yields. Bach became one of Owen's biggest advocates, telling every farmer he knew about the human vet's methods. The program grew. Within 2 years, they had trained over 500 students. Those students went back to their home worlds and spread the knowledge further. Veterinary practices across the sector started adopting Earth-based observation methods. Agricultural programs began teaching behavioral science. Military forces started treating their war beasts with the same care they gave their soldiers. Owen still took cases, but now he focused on the difficult ones, the situations where even trained experts were stuck. A mining colony where imported earth bees refused to pollinate alien plants. A research station where lab animals were dying mysteriously. A diplomatic crisis involving a species whose sacred animal companion was sick and no one knew how to help. Each case was different, but the approach was always the same. Look at the whole picture. Consider the environment. Watch the behavior. Think simple before assuming complex. Most of the time, it worked. One day, 3 years after saving Darkfang, Owen received a package. Inside was a holographic projector. When he activated it, General Torvak appeared. "Dr. Fletcher, I wanted to show you something." The hologram shifted to show a Dalari military veterinary hospital. Rows of treatment bays, each one occupied by a different war beast receiving care. Dalari vets worked calmly, using the observation techniques Owen had taught them, treating each animal as an individual rather than military equipment. "Darkfang is here," Torvak's voice continued. "Regular checkup. Nothing wrong. Just preventive care. We do this for all our animals now, because you taught us that preventing problems is better than fixing them. My son wants you to know that Darkfang is healthy, happy, and still asking about the human who smelled wrong but helped anyway. Owen smiled. In the background of the hologram, he could see a massive ravenclaw with bioluminescent markings glowing bright and strong. The creature was being examined by a Dalari vet who worked with calm confidence, no fear, just professional care. It was everything Owen had hoped to teach them. His communicator chimed. Another emergency call, this time from a species he had never heard of with an animal he had never seen. Same story, though. Their experts were stuck. They needed someone who looked at problems differently. Owen picked up his medical bag. After all this time, it still had the same tools. Scalpels, sutures, antibiotics, scanner. Simple equipment for simple problems. Because in the end, whether you were treating a house cat or a giant alien predator, the job was the same. Figure out what hurts, fix it if you can, and remember that every living thing deserves someone who cares enough to try. He headed out the door, ready for whatever came next. Somewhere in the galaxy, something was sick, and Owen Fletcher, human veterinarian, would look at it and probably think the same thing he always did. Big cat, same problem, and just like always, he would grin and get to work.